where we look at the world through a biblical worldview. AFA Today.
The biblical worldview that is increasingly in trouble if you listen to certain members of the media. That's where we come from, though. Kevin McCullough in New York every single day. Glad to be here in the belly of the beast, reporting to you what is truly important and how we can play a role in engaging our culture and doing what I like to do best, taking confusion and obliterating it and replacing it with crystal clear clarity. I feel like if we don't start addressing the most purposefully confused elements of our culture, we will never be able to see common sense or truth in the public life again. And that's really where my heartbeat is. So thank you for being here every day. Thank you for telling your friends about AFA Today, and of course the Kevin McCullough Show that airs later in the day on many of these same stations. Just a picture of how confused it is out there. Yesterday I'm reading the Huffington Post, and I read perhaps the strangest story I have ever read. Erin Andrews and Katie Hill are a teenage couple, and one of them started out as a boy and one of them started out as a girl. They both decided that they were transgendered. Someone put this idea in their head at some point, and then they both called what they do transitioning together, and they became the opposite, and they're still a couple together. I just posted this story on my Facebook page last night, and I think people's heads literally exploded. Maybe one of the most significant signs of how confused and how much confusion is in our culture than anything else you can point to in the headlines today. Now, juxtaposed to that, just across the way at hotair.com, I read another story in which a federal judge has reached into Ohio and ordered them to recognize a marriage that was performed in Maryland. Now, you may say, well, why is that important? Because it was not a traditional marriage. It was a marriage between two people of the same sex. Friends, this all emanates from the laws and the court cases and everything else that we tell you about on a regular basis. But votes matter. Elections matter. Judges matter. These things all matter. And that's one of the reasons why I've invited Bob Vander back to the AFA Today broadcast, because here's what we're dealing with, Bob. We are dealing with a culture that is so inherently confused about its identity and about the true essence of what is moral and what is not moral, that there are those, and especially if you live in pockets of the country like where I'm coming to you from today, that actually wonder if any type of tradition or moral understanding will ever be truly accepted, or if we have so devolved into, as a nation, a situation in which we are forced to operate in the muck and the mire of the whatever feels good, do it mentality. You head up the family leader. You talk to voters that are quite concerned about issues of moral importance. Your reaction to this federal judge telling Ohio that they must be forced to recognize a same-sex marriage that stemmed from Maryland. What's your thought on that?
Well, let me go back to the previous situation that you just talked about, Kevin, with a young couple that is transitioning together, but really becoming the other sex, but remaining a couple. I used to be a teacher and a coach and a high school principal, and when I hear that, I just think, first of all, you can't make this stuff up. But secondly, is that when you confuse the children about who they are and whose they are, this is what you're going to get. Right. And so my heart breaks for that population. And the youth, more than ever today, they want authenticity. They want truth, but they want somebody to step up to the microphone and be able to give it in a way that will resonate with them. And what you're seeing all the pillars of our society being eroded to say, you know what? I think I might be a girl and I think I might be a boy, so why not transition together? And at least we'll make the news, or we'll find ourselves, because we're in the search of finding ourselves. And we're saying, if you want to find the truth, we need to direct you to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. When it comes to the judge in Ohio, there's been cases like this before. In Iowa, we had a district court judge grant a divorce to a same-gender couple when we didn't recognize same-sex marriage. That same thing happened in the state of Texas when Ted Cruz was Solicitor General, and he took that thing head on, and he got that basically dissolved or annulled, that never happened because a judge did grant a divorce. Now you have a federal judge stepping in and saying, I'm going to give the benefits to this couple, even though they're Ohio residents, and Ohio says we don't recognize same-sex marriage. So what we're doing is we're allowing the courts now to determine our law, to determine our policies, which our founders, I mean, they warned us about. That would become oligarchy. That's one of the greatest threats that we have out there. And we had that same thing done in Iowa. We held those judges accountable by removing 3 of them when they overstepped their judicial bounds. So that's why we need leaders today, not just in D.C., but in Ohio and in Maryland and every other state and local community around.
If the federal judge and the action that he's taken in this situation, and again, for people that are just joining us, here's what's happened. This couple got, they had a homosexual wedding in Maryland, but now they are evidently residents of Ohio, and Ohio doesn't give same-sex marriage benefits to couples because they've defined marriage as that of a union between a man and a woman. And they're not apologizing for it. This is what our people want, and this is how we've defined it. A judge has said, no, you can't do that. You have to recognize that marriage. Bob, will this, and a lot of people, you know, when DOMA was going to the Supreme Court, a lot of people did not understand that what DOMA essentially did was it, more than anything, ensured that one state would not be subject to another state in this regard. It appears that with the initial piercing of the armor of the DOMA federal laws, that there are activist judges ready to tear down the rest of it. Your thoughts on that? Is this a chink in the armor that will now be continually pecked away at by the next rounds of court hearings?
Well, without question. And what it's doing is just exposing a continued chink in the armor. I mean, when you have a Iowa Supreme Court that says, you know, we're going to be a same-sex marriage state and go against the will of the people through their elected representatives, you know, that's a chink in the armor. When you have a openly homosexual judge in California, one judge saying, I'm going to usurp the will of 7 million.
We lost your audio there for just
declare
we're having
a same-sex marriage. Did we lose the audio, Kevin?
Just for a second there. Just back up one sentence and fill in the blank.
When you have a California judge that says, I'm going to usurp the will of 7 million people, that's a chink in the armor. And now you get to Ohio, especially after having basically the judicial cover of the U.S. Supreme Court saying, okay, I'm going to start giving out other benefits. That's why I believe this issue is going to go to the federal level. But we also need to take Justice Roberts by his words. Judges are not policymakers. They don't determine the policy. And we need leaders, local leaders in Ohio, to step up like Solicitor General Ted Cruz did in Texas and to fight this one, that this judge doesn't have the right to start giving benefits to something that the state of Ohio doesn't recognize.
Yeah. It seems to me that the issue of states' right is front and center here, and that there needs to be some clarification of that as it relates to the marriage issue in particular. And Bob, I tend to be pessimistic about this. I'm generally an optimist. I generally think that America is an optimistic place to be, that it generally is the greatest place to live on earth, that there's nothing that you can't achieve here of any race, background, et cetera, et cetera. I have all of that optimism in my natural DNA. But as I see the handwriting on the walls with some of this stuff, it just seems like we are just rapidly heading towards that cliff that once we go over it, there won't really be any return from it.
Well, I think what it is, Kevin, and I'm the same with you, I'm very optimistic about our country. And when people say, how you doing? I think I'm just very blessed. I was born in the United States of America. You know, the opportunities are endless here. But I think what you're seeing is an erosion and trying to get control back. And the left is sensing momentum. And when they're sensing momentum, they're going after everything. That's why we need leadership bigger than life today to stand in that gap, whether it be a judicial gap, a legislative gap, or a church gap, and start taking the microphone and offering up truth and authenticity, which I think the people want to hear, and believe the people will still cling to, versus saying we're going to have judges rule against your will when in regards to marriage. Well, if a judge will do that regarding marriage, what keeps them from doing it with private property or any other freedom you hold dear?
Well, and aside from that, I mean, yes, agreed on all of that. Ultimately, I believe that the most basic rights that we have, and one that you and I both hold dear, is that of religious expression. I think that the practice of one's faith is going to be very much put in peril if the activists are not held in check, and I mean immediately in the next several rounds of courts and of legislative decisions that we, the people, have the opportunity to impact. If we do not take very assertive action here, I think the very nature and free exercise of our faith is at stake. Is that an over-dramatization of the situation?
No, you're right on. And tolerance is a one-way street. And I think your religious liberty to be able to express Matthew 19, to be able to express Romans 1, to be able to talk about Genesis and the continuation of Scripture in regards to the truth being that marriage is reserved for a union of a man and a woman, that pretty soon is going to be hate speech. And can you really say that? So therefore, I think we need to stand our ground on these issues, because if we acquiesce on these issues, pretty soon they're coming after our religious liberty as well.
Let's talk just for a second about the event that you made reference to at the beginning of our time together today. I am scheduled to be with you at the Family Leaders big event coming up this next month. But for people that are hearing us, that are in the Midwest, that would have the opportunity to come and be part of it, explain what your big event is all about.
Well, August 10th, we're having the Family Leadership Summit, and we take this whole deal about leadership. It's one of our top priorities. We believe everything rises and falls on leadership. That's why we named our organization the Family Leader. Not that we're the family leader, but that Jesus Christ is the family leader, and that's where our focus needs to be. For the Family Leadership Summit, we're embedding it in biblical worldview with the teaching of Dr. Dal Tackett and Dr. David Noble, people that your audience will readily recognize as expert on worldview. And then we're inviting people for application of that worldview. People like Senator Rick Santorum, Senator Ted Cruz, and Senator Ted Cruz's dad are coming out.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. Why the senator's father? What is the connection there? I've noticed he's made several appearances with him, but what is the thing that people don't know as to why his dad is so involved?
Well, the reason I invited his dad is I heard his dad's better than the senator. That he's got a great story to tell, Cuban refugee, very articulate, but he's now a Baptist minister, and he gives a clarion call of warning for this country. That's why I wanted him.
Okay, excellent.
And so to have him with his son, that's just going to be a great deal. And then we got, as you know, we have a business magnate, Donald Trump, coming as well.
You ever get any funny looks about that?
Oh, we do. But now you got to remember, we're in Iowa. And in Iowa, we take the responsibility of vetting all of those who want to represent us on a national stage seriously. But we also believe that Donald Trump, with some of his messages on international trade and China and the threat to America's family is right on, and something that needs to be heard. I always remind people, Donald Trump is coming to our standards. We're not wavering at all in our sanctity of human life, sanctity of marriage or religious liberty or constitutional principles. Those are our standards. He wants to come in to address our crowd, so we're looking forward to having Donald Trump as well.
That's interesting. And then you got a couple of yahoos that I'm really not too sure of these two, but Stephen Baldwin and Kevin McCullough, those guys don't make any sense. Why would they be on your stage?
Well,
is something wrong with you? Did you have a headache the day you booked them? I mean, what happened there?
Well, they said they wanted to be here. No, we really wanted you, Kevin, as well as Stephen Baldwin as well, and then our good friend Steve Dace too. We wanted to get the media's insight into a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now. And so, and the media panel was one of the top rated sessions we had at our leadership summit a year ago, and we're looking for that again this year. So we're thrilled to have you coming in.
And the day before, you've got a track of opportunities just for young people. Just touch on that for a second.
Well, we think we need to reach out to the youth. And so we have a youth academy free of charge for high school age youth to come and learn about biblical worldview and then how they apply it to their lives.
All right. If people would like to know more, it's thefamilyleader.com, thefamilyleader.com, and Bob Vander, who evidently has a bit of allergies today.
I don't know what's going on.
It's all this New York air. I'm filling your studio with fog there. But Bob, we appreciate all that you're doing, and as we get closer and closer to the particularly to the Iowa caucuses in 2016. Let's stay in touch and very much do a careful job of vetting these guys so that we can do what we need to do by way of getting the best nominees and candidates possible. And I'm going to let you go get a drink of water, and thanks for being with us. Appreciate you being here. All right, there he goes, Bob Vander. Thank you for being here. Kevin McCullough, very, very happy that we could have this discussion. But I want to open the phone lines, 888-589-8840. I want to key off that thing he talked about with Cruz and Paul, transparency versus safety in a candidate. What do you like about that or not like about that? Stay with us on AFA Today. Kevin McCullough coming right back with you.